The experimental composer Arne Nordheim once said that music lives in the span between poetry and catastrophe. When I came across that quote, I felt that it had so much resonance with my approach to work, with the historical tensions that I am mining and towards revealing what I think is still present today. What I'm attempting to create is a space in which people will walk into that tension, the tension between poetry and catastrophe, the tension between the rapture and the rupture. I think a good example of how I use traces from history into the present is my use of the glass harmonica. There are two things that attract me to that instrument. One is the sound. It sounds very much like what we call the sine wave, and it's very much the backbone of digital or electronic music today. And secondly, it's history. The glass harmonica was actually invented by Benjamin Franklin in 1761. It was played by Marie Antoinette, and Mozart even composed for it. The sound of the glass harmonica itself sits very much in that situation between it represents a sonic space of tension. So just as in the Enlightenment they thought it was simultaneously the sound of angels, but also something that was potentially harmful, you can experience that today just by listening to it. Every material has a frequency at which it wants to sing. That's particularly so with glass. So part of my process is to discover what is the moment at which the glass itself wants to sing. The sonic and the sculptural elements work hand in hand in this tension. And one thing that I'm very inspired with, not only because of my use of the glass harmonica, but because of the nature of the pavilion itself, with its flanked by a glass membrane, is thinking of the pavilion itself as a body that is itself subject to the state of rapture or rupture.
I have chosen Camille Norment to represent Norway in the Venice Biennale this year because she's one of the most innovative and exciting artists that we have in Norway today. She's working in a way which is both physical and poetic, which is quite an unusual combination. She's crossing across territories between music and art and the visual arts, and she in her research goes back to various decades, to various centuries, to the 18th century, and looks forward into the present. So she kind of revisits the history, tries to understand things from it, and tries to see how that makes sense today, but also how that helps us to better understand tomorrow. Camille Norment was born in the United States, but she moved to Norway 10 years ago. And in Oslo, there is a very strong infrastructure of museums and institutions, a very lively community of artists and other cultural practitioners, a wonderfully large number of artist-run spaces, one of the largest numbers of artist-run spaces of any European capital. Camille Norment will present a project called Rapture in the Nordic Pavilion. It will be a project on a multi-sensory level. It will have a sculptural component, it will have a composition by Camille, and it will have performances by Camille using her glass harmonica.
Well, it's quite serendipitous that Venice is such a city of water and glass, because when I play the glass harmonica, I must immerse my fingertips in water to excite the glass to produce sound. Now, glass also has a very important social meaning for me. It has a very strong association with social metaphors, such as the glass ceiling, a barrier that seems to be invisible, but it is impenetrable. So all of these are elements that I'm working with the sonic tension, the social tension, this space between poetry and catastrophe, to create a space of the uncanny that prevents the visitor from settling into one set of conclusions.